So hi everyone. So thanks for coming online and physically here. So we are really happy to be back again after 1 year. So just a brief recap of what CELS is and what we plan to do. So our idea is like to bring together distributed computing and people from microbiology, synthetic biology, control theory, and so on, and really work on these fun topics. Yeah, and we really thank you a lot for coming around and having this nice time with us. So this is actually Thomas Nowak and Manish Kushwaha, which you can see in they are live from Paris. You see them in the Zoom chat. And for the organization, what we plan to do, so we have a program of 3 talks before the lunch break. There's a 2-hour break. Then we have 2 more talks. And for questions, we would ask you to write questions in the chat. Or of course, if you're live here, you just raise your hands and ask questions. Give you the mic. And then after the talk, we will ask you to unmute. Or if you prefer, if you cannot unmute yourself, of course, we will read out your question and hand it over to the speaker. So by the way, if you're watching by YouTube, there is a delay of, we measured it 15 seconds. So we will wait, of course, for your questions there. Just type them in the chat, or if there is a problem with the chat, which I think I saw in an email, you can, do we have a way to contact us easily? By mail, for example. Okay, we will first check out, of course, to fix the chat there, and we will figure out a way, of course, that you can also ask questions. Of course, you should also interact with us. Have the possibility to interact with us. A last thing. So we're very thankful for our sponsors. So which this would not have been possible. This is actually A&R, DG COSM, and we received some funding from Ian Ray. And we are really thankful also for the local organizers and for the workshop chairs. So in particular, we're very so thankful for Andrea and Yannick, who is with us here, who really helped us a lot make this happen today. So I think that's all from my side.
I would just say 2 words about Sylvie. So we're of course very happy to have Sylvie with us today. She's a professor at École Polytechnique in France, where she leads the chair for mathematical modeling and biodiversity. She pioneered in the interface between nonlinear PDE, so partial differential equations, and stochastics. She's currently leading 2 big grants, an ERC advanced grant and an ITMO cancer grant. And we are, of course, very happy to have her. And thank you that you stepped in here to the first slot. And she will talk to us about the mathematics of homotopiasis.
Okay, so thank you. So thank you for the invitation. I'm happy to be with you. And so I will try to explain what we have done with colleagues from biology and medical doctors concerning the modeling of hematopoiesis. And so I hope, tell me if it works, because I'm not sure to be able to. Oh, yes, okay. Oh, yes. Okay. So the group with why I'm working consists in a group with mathematicians. So Vincent Bancet is a professor at École Polytechnique. It's a colleague in my team. Cécile Bonnet was doing his PhD on these topics, and Simon Girel was postdoc. Now he's maître de conférence in Nice. Stéphane Giraudier is a medical doctor and director of the INSERM laboratory in Hôpital Saint-Louis in Paris, which is an hospital specialist in hematology. And Pan Gu was a PhD student, and Evelyne Loret is biologist in Hôpital Cochin. And so our aim was to build a model, mathematical model for hematopoiesis to be later able to model the emergence of mutant cells and to better understand some leukemias Stéphane Giraudier is interested in. And so I'm sorry because, yes. So usually to construct such sort of model, the experiments are on mice. And of course, because on human, it's difficult. And but very often they obtain the data by stressing mice a lot. And the aim in this work was to work with mice in vivo and to construct the model between the experiment the biologists were able to do and the mathematical questions. And so the model is based on the cell behaviors. And in order to describe as best as possible the cell differentiation, and we wanted to model the regulation, especially at the level of stem cells, cells and immature progenitors, so cells which are on the bone marrow, and for which we don't know a lot of things. And we also wanted to better understand the large variation one can observe at the individual level concerning the number of, for example, the number of blood cells. And as I said, the long-term goal that we have not finished at all, of course, is to introduce cancer mutant stem cells in this model and to see the impact of mutations. And we have different questions concerning leukemias and the effect of chemotherapies based on this first model. Okay, so the model, so at the beginning, the model is stochastic, and it's a model with compartments and defined in continuous time. And the compartments will correspond to different types of cells. So in the literature, usually you have at least 3 types of cells: the stem cells, the progenitors, and the red blood cells. But in fact, these types here I present you some picture of differentiation from stem cell until the mature cells. Red blood cells or lymphocytes or platelets or etc. And so you have different lineages, and during these mechanisms of differentiations, you go from one type of cells to another type, and with each time, I will explain that at each time you make a differentiation, there is a sort of amplification phenomenon, making the number of cells increasing a lot. So for mice, you have per individual approximately 10 to the 4 stem cells, long-term stem cell, and until 10 to the 10 red blood cells. So you have a huge amplification in the size of compartments from stem cells until mature cells. And so our aim is to describe in this talk, I will focus on the erythroid lineage, which is the one which was interested for the biologists with who we were working. And so that's, but of course, we have to take into account the other lineages appearing in this differentiation mechanism. So the types for the biologists, the types, they are almost persuaded that in fact there is a continuum of types, but for the moment they are able, so the types are defined by the way they are able to differentiate physiologically or with markers or the cells in the different compartments. So perhaps that in a long-term goal would be to define a model with a continuum of type instead of a finite number of types, as you can see here. Okay. So the amplification mechanisms in the compartment sizes is due to the the trade-off, we could say, between the two main mechanisms in this differentiation process, that mean renewal and differentiation. So at each compartment, if you are in a compartment of size n, you have two possibilities. Either you have renewals, that means that the cell divides in two cells with the same type, or you have a differentiation, and then the cell will divide into cells of the type n+1. So in our model, we decided to consider symmetric models. That means that we didn't consider the division with one cell of type n and one cell of type n+1, because it will not change a lot the model, and because we had the information we had on the data didn't allow to decide between the two models. And so here it's a model in continuous time. That means that we assume that the time before division is random, and it follows an exponential law with the parameter tau n. So that's the division rate, tau n, for a cell of type n. That means that 1/tau n is the mean time between two divisions. And so we have two probability, PND, which is a differentiation probability, and PNR, which is a renewal probabilities. And so we have two rates. Either you differentiate with rate tau n PND, or you have renewal with rate tau n PNR. And the difference between these two rates creates this amplification phenomenon from one compartment to another one. Okay, so in this talk, I would like first to present multi-scale modeling of hematopoiesis, but with a focus on the stem cells, on the immature cells regulation, which was not known. And more specifically, you have, I will consider 5 compartments which are considered as immature cells, long-term stem cells, short-term stem cells, and 3 other compartments of progenitors, MPP, CMP, and MEP. And plus, we will add the red blood cells, since we are interested in the erythroid lineage. And that means that we will consider a model with 6 compartments, because in fact, the dynamics of the last compartments, of the mature compartments, is well known, and there is a lot of literature on these compartments. So our interest was, are there regulation at this level of immature cells? And secondly, we will be interested in fluctuations, a large fluctuation, which can appear due to the multi-scale aspect of the model and of these amplification mechanisms. Okay, so the basis of the model is here. So as I said, the model will be built from observation on mice in vivo, and that's a model with 6 compartments, as we have said. And so for the 5 first one, we have this dynamics. That means that from this compartment I, we have a differentiation rate DI. We have a renewal rate RA, and mu I is the rate to divide, to go to a non-erythroid lineage. So that means that we are only interested in the erythroid lineage. That means that we will only consider this part of the model, but we have to take into account the fact that the cell can divide to go to another lineage. And so the parameter which plays a role is Ri minus mu I, which is called the net proliferation rate, which is small ri. And so either you create 2 cells of type I+1, or 2 cells of type I, or you go to another lineage. And for the the next compartment. So if you are in the compartment 5, MEP, you can either, the cell can either divide with a self-renewal dynamics, or it will give, after a certain number of mitosis, it will give red blood cells. And so we consider, we summarize all these parts by a parameter n, which will be the number of mitosis observed at the end of this lineage. That means that one MEP, which was the compartment 5, one cell MEP will give to the n red blood cells. Okay, that's the model. And so, of course, you have two ways to model such sort of dynamics, either stochastic or deterministic. So I described the model with different stochastic events. And a priori, we have to study the dynamics, the time dynamics of the number, the size, the number of cells in each compartment from 1 to k. Here, k is equal to 6. And but here we have a scale parameter, a large parameter, which is that I will call k, which will be the number of long-term cells, the number of cells in the first compartment. So we have seen that for mice, if k is essentially 10 to the 4, and so that will be our scaling parameter. And one can prove that on such sort of model, so it's very standard in mathematics to prove that if you consider the stochastic process, where you can describe all the stochastic events, all the division events, all the death events, and if you divide, so nkt is a vector of sizes in each compartment, and divided by k, then when k tends to infinity, this process will converge to a deterministic system that we will describe in the next slide. And that, in a certain sense, this theorem justifies the fact that very often in this domain, we study deterministic systems, because we consider a certain number of stem cells. Of course, what we could say that 10 to the 4, it's not so large. That can be a problem, but we can also consider that it's large enough to consider that this approximation is good. Okay. But of course, for the moment, we consider all the system, but imagine that you have mutant cells which appear in such mechanisms. At the beginning, the mutant cells that will be in a very few number, and then their own subpopulation will be very stochastic. So it's important to keep in mind that behind the deterministic system, there is a stochastic process. And secondly, since the real model is stochastic, it will fluctuate around its deterministic approximation. And we will see in the second part of the talk that these fluctuations will be amplified by this amplification mechanism between renewal and differentiation. Okay, so I give you the 6 compartmental deterministic model, which is written here. So I recall RIT is the renewal rate, DIT, and it depends on T. DIT is the differentiation rate, and N of T is the number of mitosis between one MEP and one red blood cell. And so the dependence of the parameter on T will later include the possible regulations that you can see in the system. Of course, if the parameter were constant, you will have a linear system. Yes. So here the only parameter we know well is the death. I'm sorry, you have to. There's no plus here. So here you have the death of red blood cell, because the red blood cells, they are only able to to disappear, and that's well known, and especially for mice, one knows that the survival duration from a red blood cell is approximately 40 days. So this D6 is 1/40, okay? And so the question is how to estimate the different parameters in this model, how to capture the dynamics of these parameters. Okay, so sorry, yes, the first thing to do is to consider the system under homeostatic conditions, that means at equilibrium. So here we consider that all the parameters are at their equilibrium, so they stay constant. And for this experiment, our biologists were able to compute the number of cells in each compartment. So that's not so easy. They take mice, they kill them, they take the bones, and they observe what happens in the bone marrow, and they count the cells in the bone marrow. And they were also able to obtain what it's called the proportion of BRDU labeled cell, which is the proportion of cells having made a division at least once in a time interval of 20 hours. And so with these observations, we were also able to find the coefficients at the equilibrium, since we were able to prove such sort of formula. So here you see that, for example, the size at equilibrium of the compartment I is given as a linear, in a linear form with respect to the size of the compartment I-1 at equilibrium. And you see that the coefficient, so it's 2di-1, the differentiation rate from I-1 to I, but divided by the difference between the differentiation rate and the renewal rate. And you see that smaller is the difference, larger is the amplification mechanisms. So here you have the coefficients which give you this amplification of sizes between the different compartments. And this quantity is related to the total jump rate, which is the sum of the differentiation and renewal rates. And the proportion of cells marked by BRDU can be computed, and one can prove that it is exactly equal to this quantity. So it's a proportion of cell having divided before until a time t. So it's 1 minus the exponential minus the total jump rate at equilibrium times t. And then we were able to estimate for this tau I star for any compartment I, and then all the value of the rates at equilibrium. And then we were looking for the regulations at each compartment level. And so the biologists, they decided to make injection of phenylhydrazine in the mice. So the phenylhydrazine is a chemical agent that causes sudden hemolysis, destruction of very sudden destruction of red blood cells. And they observe what happens. So they observe the dynamics of the phenylhydrazine treatment. So at time 0, 1, 3, 5, 10, 16, and 28 days in the 6 compartments. So compartments are 1, 2, so that's the long-term and short-term stem cells. And then you have MPP, CMP, MEP, and finally the red blood cells. And what they observe, so at the beginning, so it seems that there is a very strong effect, which is a huge decrease of in the compartments, of decrease of cells in the compartment. But you see that after 3 days, so there is a huge increase of the, here we consider the long-term stem cells, a huge increase of the cell number. And then and after that, it decreases and it goes. So the red line is the equilibrium value in the compartment side, in the compartment. And so the number of cells go under this equilibrium value and finally arrive at the equilibrium. And so here it's a short term, and you see that you have essentially the same dynamics. And in each compartment, except in the red blood cell one, you can observe large oscillation around the equilibrium value. In any compartment, the equilibrium value is given by the red line. And for the red blood cells, you observe that you have first a huge decreasing and and then it comes back and it go here. You go smoothly to the equilibrium after 1 month. And so it was a surprise for our biologist colleagues to observe such sort of reaction to phenylhydrazine, and in particular in this stem cell compartment. In this all these compartments, remember, are concern immature cells. And so we were, of course, we wanted to model this regulation. So, of course, the biologist knows that there are a lot of cytokines which are active after such sort of treatment, but they don't know exactly which cytokine was important. And there is different cytokines which can regulate either the differentiation or the renewal. And secondly, you see that you have a perturbation, but you have oscillations. That means that you don't come, you are able to go up and to go down the equilibrium, meaning that you have a sort of delay effect. That that means that the nonlinearity is not so easy to capture. And in particular, the nonlinearity cannot be captured by the fact that the coefficient depends directly on the size of the coefficients. And so we decided to model the proliferation and differentiation rates by so the dependence on time of these two rates by using two functions, by introducing two functions, UR and UD, which will summarize the action of all the different regulators, all the different cytokines. So UR will summarize the action of regulators on renewal, and UD on differentiation. And so we first, by simulation, we observed that this function will not depend on the size of the red blood cell compartment. And so we introduce YT is the total number of cells in the 5 first compartments. So that's the compartment size over the size at equilibrium. Okay, we renormalize each size by the size at equilibrium. To remember that from one compartment to another, you have a huge amplification. And so if you want something which is to obtain quantities of the same order, you have to divide by the size at equilibrium. And so the good function we have chosen, so good in a sense that they are able to explain the data, are this one. So we have here you have the dynamic of UR and the dynamics of UD. So for UR, we decided. So of course, Céline, our PhD students, took a lot of time to find this function, but we have this function. So this regulation. Here we have 1 over YT square minus a degradation term. MR is a degradation parameter, and for UD you have some another. Here it's another function of YT is a YT square minus another degradation term, and these degradation terms are linear. And for the renewal rate for compartment I at time t will be such sort of, so it's a constant time, the value at equilibrium, time this function URT at to a certain power, and same thing for the differentiation rate. And so we also took this function to model the number of mitosis. So n of t will be the value at equilibrium plus, so here we have 30 minus n star because we found in the literature that so this number was the maximal number of mitosis from compartment M EP until red blood cells. And here we have a logistic function. And so in a certain sense, this regulation, these two functions, which summarize the cytokines, the regulation effects, are the way we have to model the delay and the oscillation we observed in the data. And with this model, and so sorry, I have really yes. We calibrated the model, and to do that, we use a stochastic optimization algorithm, which is based on what is called CMRS method. It's a covariance matrix adaptation and evolution strategy, and it's an algorithm which is really particularly well adapted to our problem because we have a lot of parameters, and it's a stochastic algorithm, and which is well developed in our lab in CMAP by a team of INRIA. So with this algorithm, which minimize the discrepancy between simulated and experimental data, we were able to find a good parameter which explained the data as you can see. And so we made some sensibility analysis, and so this model was satisfying, and also to validate the model, we made some experiments in silico, in the sense that we decided to study 3 other stresses, and so that means that we made on the model different experiments, and we compared with results we found in the literature. So the first, we simulated the loss of 15% of red blood cells. And so our model predicted a normalization of the red cell mass after 3-4 days, and no major effect on the immature compartments. And that's what was previously expected. But, so we can say that in some papers. Secondly, we simulated a 5-FU treatment, which is a sort of a chemotherapeutic compound, and which kills sickling cells at between 1 and 2 days after injection. And so our model indicated some behavior on the immature compartment. So we observe that immature compartment enters the cell cycle after between 4 and 10 days after the injection, and no effect, essentially no effect on the mature compartments, and that was consistent with previous literature. And we also simulated some eradication of long-term stem cell, and we observed that the model maintained the mature hematopoiesis, and also immature compartment, even if we had a reduced number of short-term stem cells, and that was also observed in the literature. And so to conclude this part of the talk, that means that from this data in vivo, we were able to construct a model, but with a feedback between the model and the data, because at the beginning, so that's the question we asked to biologists. We make them make the experiment adapted to our questions. And then from this model, we finally calibrated. We validated this model by this experiment in silico. And so now, since we have this model, so the biologists, they are doing the similar experiment, but with mice carrying the mutations, leukemias mutants. And we hope with this new data, which are harder to obtain because a lot of mice die, we hope to integrate the knowledge of these mutant cells on the model and to see and to better understand the emergence of the leukemia. So the second way we wanted to do, as I said, was to capture the large fluctuations. So that means what can we, so for this first part of the talk, we focused on the deterministic system, but we know that we have fluctuations, stochastic fluctuations around this deterministic approximation. And in particular, we knew from the medical doctor, but also in the literature, that if you consider one individual, one human, and if you observe the number of red blood cells in his blood, there are variations, really a real variation of this number of red bloods over time, and with little more than 10%. So you have really smooth variation if you consider the number of red blood cells over time for one fixed individual. And so, of course, since for a human, you know that you have approximately 10 to 11 red blood cells, you know by the central limit theorem that if you have fluctuations, that should be the square of this quantity, essentially. And it's really, it's really smaller than 10% of this quantity. And our question was, are we able to explain this large and smooth fluctuations by the model? And what we see is that it's really the effect of these successive amplifications between at each time we have a new compartment, which can explain such sort of effect. So to understand that, we chose a really simplified, simple model, really simplest as the first one I presented, which is to just consider 3 compartments at equilibrium without regulation, but and we consider a unique lineage, but we always take into account the dynamics by our scaling parameter, which is the number of stem cells. And here we assume that so in the stem cells, your probability of differentiation and renewal are equal. That means that essentially you are at equilibrium in this first compartment. So the dynamics is only due to the fluctuation, but you have the same probability to create a cell or to have a differentiation of if a cell of type 1 differentiates for the compartment 1 is a death. It disappears, the cell disappears of the system. So that means that at the compartment 1 level, you have just a birth and death process with the same parameters, 1/2. Okay. And so in the second parameter, we assume, that the different, but I'm sorry because it's it's very, very sensitive. We assume that the difference between the cell, the differentiation and renewal rate is a function of k in this form is 1 over k to something. It's small, and it's of order k to minus a certain gamma 2. And we assume that the death rate, the death of the red blood cells, is of order k to minus gamma 3. And the good discussing with the biologists, we see that the good scaling is to assume that gamma 2 is less than gamma 2. And so we have different scales in the model. We have the scale K, which is the size of the compartment 1. And you have amplification, which, remember, this parameter gave this was the coefficient which gave the amplification between two compartments. That means that the compartment 2 will be of the size of the compartment 2 is of the order k times k to the gamma 2. And to go to the compartment 3, you have to multiply by k to gamma 3. Okay, so you have 3 different size scales in the model here. And so I will show you simulation of what happens. So at the beginning for the simulation, to see really what happens, we assume that we have only cells in the first compartment. And we have 2,000 cells with different parameters gamma 2 and gamma 3, meaning that k to gamma 2 is equal to 60 and k to gamma 3 is equal to 400. And so if we consider so we have 3 compartments, and we consider the size, the number of cells in each compartment. And the orange lines are the value at equilibrium. So here we begin with 2,000 cells in compartment 1, and you see that you have fluctuation. We have seen that we have a large number of cells, and we have critical birth and death process. So we have fluctuations around the equilibrium. So that's not that's normal. And here I forgot to say that we have time. We consider the dynamics on a time interval 0.5. That means in a short duration. So here we see the fluctuation, but here essentially you see just a sort of line for the compartment 2, very smooth line, which is very far from the equilibrium. And at this time scale, we don't see anything for the compartment 3. And so now we consider what happens in a longer scale. Remember, 60 is k to gamma 2. So here we consider duration, which is of the order k to gamma 2. And so, of course, in the first compartment, you continue to see the fluctuation around the equilibrium. And in compartment 2, you see that you begin to observe something which is smoother, but which can fluctuate around the equilibrium. And in compartment 3, there is just the beginning of the dynamics. And so, as we have seen, this line corresponds to an order k. This line an order k to 1 plus gamma 2, and this line an order k to 1 plus gamma 2 plus gamma 3. And so now I will consider a longer duration, which is here. And so here the duration is 400. That is the order of k to gamma 3. And so here we really see, so you see you have these very fast fluctuations, which are, and we will see that there are Gaussian fluctuations, the standard Gaussian fluctuation around the equilibrium in compartment 1. In the second compartment, you see that you have a sort of smooth line, but you can see that the smooth line is also composed of very, very short fluctuations. So here you can see the effect of the first level on this large fluctuation of level in this compartment 2. And in this compartment 3, we see a smoother line here, which fluctuates very slowly around its equilibrium. Okay, so we have really 3 size scales, but also 3 time scales for the fluctuations. And here the simulations are with initial condition at equilibrium to see really what happens. And for t is equal 1,000. And so, of course, here you have a lot of very fast fluctuations around the equilibrium. Here it's slower, and here it's really very, very slow and very, very smooth. Okay, so one sees that it's really a multi-scale question, and of course that necessitates some probabilistic arguments, but so the right object to study is the number of cells. So if we want to understand the fluctuations in the compartment 3, we will consider the dynamics in the time scale t k to the gamma 3, and we will divide each compartment size by its order of magnitude, k to 1 plus gamma 2, k to 1 plus gamma 2 plus gamma 3. And so here it's a very long time scale. And then the dynamic, so it's what's called the solo phase dynamics. And what we can prove that in the compartment 2, the time scale is large, and in fact, this compartment 2 will go very fast to its equilibrium. And it will be hidden in the equation as a coefficient, in fact. And what we can prove is that the dynamics of the third compartment can write as some deterministic function, Z3 of t, times the order of magnitude we had in mind, plus some random process, V3, times this quantity, k to 1 plus 2 gamma 2 plus 3 gamma 3 over 2. And so V3 is given here. So I give you the equation for Z3, this quantity, the deterministic mean, the mean dynamics of the compartment, the third compartment size. And so if we consider the fluctuation here, V3 of t is a solution of this function. And here V1 is essentially a Brownian motion. So you have at the first level in the compartment 1, you have only fluctuation. Remember, it's the mean is 0. And so you have fluctuation given by a Brownian motion. And these fluctuations are transmitted to the compartment 3. And they are, but in this way, that means that explaining that V3, the fluctuation at level 3, are really smooth because it's an integration with respect to ds of the Brownian motion. Okay. And what we see here is that the scale we have is not the square of this quantity, which would have been given by the central limit theorem, but it's a larger quantity here. And explaining that can explain this very large fluctuation we observe. Okay, and so of course it's very far from real data, but what we observe is that for human, k to the gamma 3 is the mean life duration of red blood cells, and so we know that it's 120 days. And so knowing that and noting that the difference between the size of compartment 3 minus its deterministic approximation divided by n3, so we are looking for the fractions, the proportion, so for the of the fluctuation by renormalized by the size of the compartment 3. And one sees that it's of the order k to gamma 3 minus 1 over 2. And so if we consider that, as was, for example, observed in this paper, if we consider that the fluctuation reaches 10% of the number of RBC, and that k to gamma 3 is 120 days, so we can get that the scaling parameter k is Here it's 12,000. And that is the order of the number of stem cells we have for humans. So it's not, it's not, of course, it's not an explanation, or it's not based on very real data, but at least that means that the result we obtain is in the good scales. Okay. And okay, I'm finished.
Thanks so much, Sylvie, for the great talk. So for questions, I would propose, Matthias, if you start in the room and then we go to Zoom.
Yes, perfect. Do you have any questions? Like, to the mic if you want. Yeah. So actually, I would have a questions, but perhaps like let's go to the others first, and if there is still time, I'd be very interested.
Okay, Fabrizio, you might just want to unmute yourself and ask the question.
Hi, thank you for your talk, Sylvie. I also work with stochastic and deterministic modeling. I apologize, my question might be a little bit simple, but still, it's mainly a curiosity. What are the reasons for stochastic modeling in the human body regarding immune system? Because for me, I would feel that most responses are deterministic. What is the main advantage in the stochastic modeling in this case?
So yes, I don't see. So first, of course, to describe hematopoiesis when you have a lot of cells, deterministic models are well adapted and very efficient. But first, the last part of the talk explains that if we want to understand the fluctuations, we need to come back to the stochastic model. That could be a first answer. And the second one is that when you want to model the emergence of mutations of leukemia, for example, you have at one point one stem cell, which is a mutant, which will divide and differentiate and will send in the system mutant cells. And this phenomenon is really stochastic. First, the emergence of the mutant cells, the first division of leukemic cell, and at the beginning, the population of leukemic cell is very small, and so it's really some method to fluctuate, to random fluctuations. And so it's important to understand the global dynamics from the stochastic point of view, even if in our head we think the stochasticity is essentially for leukemic cells in a resident population, which can be approximated by a deterministic model.
Thank you very much.
But if you want to understand fluctuations, you need to come back to the stochastic model. But of course, it's two ways to describe the same phenomenon.
My question was most regarding like the biological justification. But still, yeah, you clearly gave me a pretty amazing justification. But have you ever tried to predict this potential fluctuation for leukemia deterministically, or is that something that would be impossible?
I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Sylvie. Can you hear me? Yeah, I have one question. Thanks for the wonderful talk. Really like the integration of the and the interplay between the modeling and experiment data, and especially the prediction, the depth oscillations. I have a question regarding the scaling parameters. I'm not sure maybe I missed that part. I'm not sure whether that scaling parameter is needed in the model, or what is the purpose of that to do the simulation?
No, in the first part of the talk, the scaling parameter is not needed, in the sense that we focused on the deterministic approximating model. You're right. But I wanted to make a sort of introduction, including two points of view for modeling such sort of systems. That means either stochastic or deterministic system, but in fact it describes the same phenomenon. That means that depends of the questions you have in mind. But
okay, thank you. Another question about the depth oscillation after fitting the experiment data. I see the fitting is really, really great. And I'm wondering, what is a mechanism we can get from this fitting? Is there any new or something that can come from this fitting can give us some maybe simple mechanism for the oscillation?
what do you could you repeat? I didn't.
I mean, for the modeling, by fitting this data, right? I say that fitting is very good. But I'm wondering, after the fitting, did we just change the parameters, or we just kind of revert the model somehow? We can fit the data well, so we can get the mechanism behind to understand the oscillation. Like maybe
So usually when you have such sort of oscillation, one say there is a delay, and there are some models where one can write some delay parameter. Like, I don't like that, because it's something that means that the effects are hidden, in fact. But so we wanted to go more to better model what happens, and we decided to model the effect of regulator by these two functions, this auxiliary function UR and UD. And but what is very interesting that by adding these two functions, we added a lot of parameters, in fact, and and usually one say, well, if you have a lot of parameters, you can fit anything with anything. But in fact, not at all. But Céline, the PhD student, she took a long time to fit the data. It was not at all easy, and in fact, we had no choice at all. That was very interesting. I mean, we had no choice in the form of the function of UYT we had here and here. And we needed these two functions, and also the power we have here. So that was really interesting. So now we think that we have a good system to describe the regulation in this immature stem cells, and this immature cells compartment. And now we will use it in the first, but we took a lot of time, several years to arrive to this model, because the experiment takes a lot of time, and we were obliged to wait for them.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, the reason I'm asking, because I have also project we had unexpected oscillation, a stepped oscillation, and we use a model to fix that it didn't work, and we have to reverse the model. So yeah, so it's so I will talk about that later. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah.
If there are no other questions, so I might ask a question if it's good for everybody. So I might want to ask a more general question than Xiaozhong here, like just generalizing a bit. Like here you had a very hard time finding those two functions, those two equations, right? And you said, okay, now this explains the data quite well, so we use it. And of course, I have had reviewers disagree with this viewpoint. Can you tell us your viewpoint on this?
Sorry?
ask about like having a function that fits the data versus digging deeper, going one level down, and finding the mechanism and then explaining like deriving the function. Like when do you stop? What's your philosophy on this?
But I'm not sure to have understood the question, but you mean from this model, what?
So I'll ask the question like maybe, so here you found a differential equation that explains the data quite well. And then some people might argue that, oh, now you should dig deeper. You should go one level down and derive this equation at some point. When do you know where to stop?
Yes, to put biology here behind.
Yes. When do you stop personally?
So that not my word, but we discuss with the biologists a lot, of course, but I am not convinced that we can go further because they think that there are several cytokines arriving in this, but perhaps it can be done, but not by me. I mean, but not by our group. It's more with the biologists and people specialized in cells. And for us, we have a sort of a way to describe this hematopoiesis, and we prefer to wait for the leukemia cells data and to adapt the method in the for these cells and see what happens and which effect will have such sort of regulation on if you have two types of cells. I mean the leukemias and the same cells. And, but of course, certainly one can go further, but that necessitates to go back to know what happens inside the cell, and it's not our job. Perhaps I'm not sure that the medical doctor are also able to do that.
Makes a lot of sense.
That's,
I saw that
because these cells, they are not in the blood, they are in the marrow, so the bone marrow. So if you don't, you will not kill human to see what happens in the marrow. So it's not so easy to have. So they know different cytokines acting on the cell compartment on this, but not very precisely, not with quantification. Well,
that makes sense.
Thank you.
I just thought that Manish had a question. He raised his hand. Do you want to unmute yourself?
Yes. Thank you, Sylvie, for this great talk. I had a question about when you finished the first part of your talk, you said that there were the cycles of fitting and validation between experiments and the model. Can you tell us how many, because these seem like very difficult and involved experiments. So how many cycles are possible of this sort? And when you go back to do the experiments to explore the model further, do you take other parameters? Do you change the times that the marrow cells are collected? Or what is varied between the different cycles of fitting and validation?
Do you mean I'm not sure to have understood the question.
What I mean is, I thought, maybe I misunderstood. I thought that you said that there is a cycle of validation, fitting and validation. So I assume that this means that after a model is fitted, you go back and test again in experimental data. So is this something that was done multiple times? And when doing so, are the experimental conditions varied for the next cycle of fitting?
Yes. So yes, I'm sure what we at the end. So I said two different things. I said first that we had a lot of feedbacks with biologists in order to construct the model, because I don't know if you have the same experiment, because I don't know exactly to which sort of colleagues I am speaking with, but when we constructed the model, we speak with the biologists and we ask them questions concerning that we needed to construct the model, and they were unable to answer because when we asked them about are there regulation at the stem cell level, they said, we don't know. And so they were obliged to imagine the experiment to observe that. Because it seems that there are a huge literature concerning the regulation at the level of red blood cells or of the progenitors, the last progenitors. But the regulation in the bone marrow, they didn't know. So that's a way. So we had a lot of questions, and they made experiment, and we come back to the model, and then to the experiment, and so on. But at the end, to validate the model, we didn't come back to the experiment. We made the experiment in silico. We simulated in our model different biological behaviors, and we compared what we obtained with our model to the data in the literature.
I see. All right.
With three different experiments in silico. We did that, yes. But of course, I think that our biologist colleague could do that, could also do that, but we have no time to. So we decided to do like that.
Great, thank you.
Okay, should we give it back one more time to the room in Augusta, Matthias?
Yes. So thanks a lot, Sylvie, for your amazing talk, a very inspiring talk on many aspects of the modeling and improving. I have many detailed questions, but perhaps one in the concept of time, one overview question, like what was for you, what did you find the most difficult in this work? Like, was it some particular theorem that you wanted to prove that really was the most difficult, or was it the fitting data?
Mathematically speaking, I think that the beautiful result is a result to obtain on this fluctuation, because it's not we don't have so many examples with multi-scale dynamics and with such sort of scaling, say, and so that was an interesting mathematical result. But no, the most difficult was to collaborate and to adapt our way of thinking, our how to say, time scales in this project. I mean, because it's not so easy to discuss with medical doctors and with experiments and so on. But for me, at least, it was new.
Really amazing results. So, the beautiful combination of mathematics, modeling, and biology. So,
biology, I'm used to discuss with biologists, but with medical doctor, it's another. Because they, one difficulty we had at the beginning is that they had this experiment on mice, but they had their knowledge on humans, and they mix and since they are not used to play with real data, they mix the data. So sometimes they give us information on human, another one sometimes in mice, and we took a lot of time to realize that we had. It's not so anecdotic, because I think that's really a difficulty to work with medical doctors, that they are not so familiar with real data.
Great. Thanks a lot.